Okay, let's dive in. We're going to talk about how knowing their why boosts students' academic engagement. Our agenda, we're going to talk about the importance of our students' focus, how students' source of motivation sets them up for success or struggle, challenges that our students are facing these days, our recent results from Brooklyn's Medgar Evers College and how that program worked, how it was structured, and how purpose boosts resilience and academic engagement. I'll have a variety of studies to share with you. So in introduction, my name is Laura Garrison-Brook, and I am founder of Discovering My Purpose, a charitable organization that focuses on helping college students and at-risk youth lead happier, more meaningful lives. I would love it if you would have a robust conversation in the chat space. There's a lot of smart people in the room who can enrich this conversation. So here's how to access your chat space if you're new to this virtual world. Enter any questions or comments that you have here as they occur to you. For the moment, everyone is muted, but we'll change that at the end of the presentation when we'll also have a chance for Q&A at the end of our time together. So once kids hit their junior or senior year of high school, what question do you think they hear most from the adults in their lives? It's this, right? Where do you want to go to college? Here's what I think the question should be. Why do you want to go to college? An educator named Paul Golbensky had a great quote to share, which was, "We do career exploration at the highest dollar amount possible." It's called university. I think we all know that our kids have been struggling. Professor Bill Damon is the director of Stanford Center on Adolescence, and he shares, for too many young people today, apathy and anxiety have become the dominant moods, and disengagement, or even cynicism, has replaced the natural hopefulness of youth. Now, I don't know about you, but that quote kind of makes me feel like this. This anxiety that our kids are feeling, where is it coming from? Well, my opinion is that we are asking our high school students to do more and more and more. AP classes, extracurriculars, good grades, and all of this energy has to come from somewhere. If they have no sense of why they're working towards spending all this energy or what they're working towards, this takes a toll on them. Now, when I said they aren't sure what they're working towards, those high schoolers, you might have thought, sure they do. Those high schoolers are working hard to get into college. Now that circles back to the challenge we talked about earlier. If our focus is on where they go to college, not why, you run into a risk of challenges. Going to a good school is a goal, not a purpose. And I'm sure you've witnessed high-achieving kids who have worked and worked and worked to get into your school, and then when they arrived, they crashed. Why do you think that happens? Getting into college has been their driving ambition, right? That's always served as their North Star. And once they get into college, they can lose direction because they aren't sure what is next. So I'm currently reading this book, which is focused on helping the younger generation unleash their passion, purpose, and performance. The author of the question why, the why generation, the author Mark Perna talks about getting into college as if it's the 100-meter dash in the Olympics. These students have trained for years and years for this moment, with the crack of the gun, they're off, running as fast as they can until they cross the finish line. A lot of runners start to slow gradually, and they maybe wind up walking down the track. But some of these runners give it everything they have just as they cross the finish line and then crumple to a heap on the ground, completely spent. Author Perna says that young people approach getting into college the same way. Once they cross the finish line, they stop cold because they think they've accomplished their goal. They haven't trained for what comes next, and that leaves these students in a vulnerable place. So, what's the impact? The American College Health Association runs a big research effort, which you've probably heard of. It's called the National College Health Assessment. And what they do is they gather data from nearly 20,000 students at 44 schools. And in 2019, they reported that nearly 49% of students felt moderate levels of stress, and nearly 28% reported high levels of stress. Additionally, nearly a quarter of these students reported being diagnosed for an anxiety disorder in the past. So let that sink in for a moment. These are 2019 numbers. So that means pre-COVID, over 3/4 of our college students reported a sense of moderate to high anxiety. Furthermore, the National College Health Assessment reported that over half of the students, 50.3% of students, had a positive score on the UCLA loneliness scale. And a quarter had a positive score on the Suicide Behavior Questionnaire Revised, the SBQR. So this anxiety, loneliness, and depression takes a huge toll on our college students. And as you probably know, the average 4-year graduation rate for public schools across the country is 33%. This is according to the U.S. Department of Education. If you extend that window to 6 years, the graduation rate for a 4-year degree is 57.6%. At private schools, the numbers go up a little bit. The 4-year graduation rate is roughly 53%, and the 6-year rate is 65%. So that means, looking at these figures, that at the very best numbers on average, less than 2/3 of our students are graduating with their degrees after all this time, all this effort, all this money invested. So obviously, we're all focused on helping our students cross the finish line, right? It's in their best interest, and it's in the best interest of the schools that you work at to have that happen. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the foundational challenges that undermine student retention. So we return to that question of why students want to go to college. So you might have had this conversation with your students in the past about, well, why are you here? What are you here at college for? You might have gotten answers that look like this: the big house, the fancy car. And I'm afraid that's not the kind of motivation that we need to plug into. Why is that? In industrialized countries like ours, wealth levels have doubled or even tripled over the last 50 years. But here's what's important. Happiness levels have remained flat, and depression has become even more common. This is due to something called the principle of hedonic adaptation, which means we absolutely do get a happiness boost for a short period of time right after we get that new car or the new phone. But very quickly, we get used to having it, and our happiness levels just slide right back down to where they were beforehand. And studies have actually found that the people who report the greatest interest in attaining money, fame, or beauty are consistently found to be less happy and even less healthy than those who pursue less materialistic goals. So you probably recognize this. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in case it's been a while since you've seen it, remember our focus is always from the bottom up, meaning that we first address basic needs, and then psychological needs, and then self-fulfillment needs. So studies have found that once our basic needs are met for food, safety, and shelter, more stuff doesn't make us happier. If you'd like to read more about the science of this, you can pick up Tim Kasser's High Price of Materialism. So this awesome cartoon helps us picture this tension. Most of us have probably felt this way at times, right? Happiness is always promised to be just around the corner if only we keep working and earning and buying and going. And if I had to add something in here, I'd probably say in dieting. So I think that this is why some of our kids are disengaging. And I'll tell you that I'm a mom of a 29-year-old boy, and I definitely saw a resistance, not only from my son, but also his friends, to buy into the push, 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 go, go, go messages that they got from parents and from school. We keep telling them that happiness is just around the corner, and they don't buy it. So if you attended my earlier session, you heard a little bit about our work with Medgar Evers College. So let's talk more about it now. In early 2019, I was very lucky to make the acquaintance of Dr. Joanne Roll, who's Dean of the Business School at Medgar Evers College, which is a CUNY school in Brooklyn, New York. Dean Roll reached out to me because she was witnessing the challenges her students were having, and she was searching for a solution. So we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive with how we helped Medgar Evers. So Dean Roll shared, I've had individual conversations with students who are near graduation, but still uncertain about what they want to do professionally. And I've tracked our retention rate, since this is tied to the success and well-being of both our students and our school as a whole. So this is the challenge that Dean Roll was facing. According to the National Center for Education Statistics at Medgar Evers, 58% of students who started in 2017 wound up returning in 2018. So that was first-year students in 2017, only 58% returned in 2018. And forgive me for this number being incorrect. The National Center for Education changed their stats a little bit. It used to be 13% was their 6-year graduation rate, but that's changed. It's now 14%. So 14% of the students who started in 2012 at Medgar Evers graduated with their 4-year degree. And these are the kinds of challenges that Dean Roll felt were critical to address. And she felt that connecting students to a clearer sense of purpose was a great way to boost student success and graduation rates. For the students who are uncertain about their path forward, and this is Medgar Evers students and others, this is the question we need to ask them. What mark do you want to make on the world? Now, the likely response when we ask this question, especially with those who are on the younger side of life, there's a good chance we're going to get a reaction like this. And that's totally fine. Studies have shown that 75 to 80% of people, and that's young adults and older adults, don't know what their purpose in life is. So as you can tell from the name of our organization, Discovering My Purpose, Purpose has a really special place in our hearts. We believe that purpose is transformational. So a quick reminder from our earlier session, here are all the ways that a purposeful life is better. And this is based on just the dozens and dozens of studies out there. People are happier, healthier, less anxious, less depressed, have less substance abuse problems. They're more successful and more fulfilled. So let's start tying in how purpose boosts academic engagement and boosts student retention. And at the heart of this, one of the really powerful things about purpose is the power of intrinsic motivation. And as you know, intrinsic motivation is when your motivation to do something comes from inside of yourself. So I love this flow chart that I've put together where purpose, means that we are being intrinsically motivated, right? It's doing something you love when you're doing your purpose. That becomes a big strategic advantage for you. And the chances are that you're going to work harder at it, which means you're going to outperform others since you'll, again, be intrinsically motivated to, put in that hard work. And you'll also be less likely to give up in the face of adversity. It's been proven that people who have purpose absolutely have greater levels of resilience and perseverance. Because again, you love it. Even when there's a setback, you come back to it because you love it. So all of these things together add up to a greater chance of success. So talking more about some studies that track the impact of purpose on college students. Researchers Chickering and Reeser found that developing purpose is a critical part of a successful college experience. This is from a study they did in 1993. And the research pointed out a boost in academic engagement for the following reasons. When students connect the dots between how their education is moving them towards something that's deeply meaningful to them, magic happens. Students understand that their studies are a necessary and powerful tool that they need in order to move towards the purpose that speaks to their heart. Researchers Yeager and Bundick found that students who had purposeful work goals said that studying and doing homework was more meaningful compared to youth with other kinds of professional aims. So what that means is, for example, if one student said, I want to be a nurse or a doctor because I want to heal the sick, okay? That's a purposeful work goal. And then if someone else said, I want to get my finance degree in order to make a lot of money, that is a professional aim. And that's how they compared those two things. And you can see how the purposeful work goal is much more intrinsically driven. Grit is also associated with purpose. And this was a study that was done by Hill, Burrow, and Bronk. And individuals with purpose are more likely to report increases in grit over time than those without purpose. And then there's also a strong relationship between self-efficacy and purpose. So purpose was found to be significantly related to 3 different measures of self-efficacy, according to DeWitts et al. In a study done in 2009. So here's our recipe for retention. And this is pretty sweet, the way these come together. We've got purpose, we have self-efficacy, and we have grit. Right? And as I mentioned in a previous slide, which I should have put in here as well, there's also the tie between purpose and perseverance and purpose and resilience. So all kinds of great things adding up to a recipe for student retention. So let's talk a little bit more about what purpose is. We've talked a lot about the power of purpose and how it, helps students, and how important it is for students to understand why they're in college. But let's talk more about what purpose is. So the official definition, according to psychologists and sociologists, is that it has 4 key things in it. 1, there's a long-term element to it. It doesn't change day by day. 2, it's tied towards things you work towards. 3, it means a lot to you. You love working on it, whatever it might be. And 4, it makes the world a better place. So, all right, we've got a sense now of what purpose is. Again, long-ranging commitment to action that means a lot to us and benefits the world. So, how do we find it? So, I love using this Venn diagram. So this is where we look. We look in the overlap of what we're good at, what we love to do, and what the world needs. That is where our purpose lives. So there's a good chance that we might be back to this, especially for those who are just starting off in life. If the reaction we get is, but I don't know what I'm good at, I'm not sure what I love to do yet, and I have no idea what the world needs. So as I mentioned earlier, Discovering My Purpose is a nonprofit organization focused on helping youth live happier, more meaningful lives. Our charitable focus is on providing our program In Pursuit of Purpose for free to at-risk teens and college students. We're funded through grant dollars and the donations of sponsors. That's how we make that happen. Here's what we believe and what we tell students. Everyone has a purpose that lives within them. Some just take a little bit more time to uncover. Whether they find their purpose right away or it takes them a while, we tell them not to stress out either way. When starting on the path to purpose, here's the invitation. I suggest that you ask your students, what mark do you want to make on the world? And just starting this conversation is so powerful. There have been studies that have shown that just by saying, what is your purpose in life, makes people feel more purposeful. That's how much we're drawn to it. So if you know what your own purpose is, then I would definitely encourage you to share that with them. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. When we figure out who we are and what we're here to do, it is so grounding for us emotionally. And you might remember that quote earlier from Professor Bill Damon about our students being adrift, youth being adrift. So our youth are in such desperate need for this kind of emotional grounding. And when youth have a sense of how they can meaningfully contribute to the world, this means they're more likely to do better in school and they're more likely to thrive. So with that as a segue, let's get back to talking about our recent class at Medgar Evers. So Dean Roll shared, in my opinion, there are 2 critical elements that support student retention and persistence to graduation. There are students' understanding of why they are in school, i.e. how education supports the pursuit of their life purpose, and a strong dose of resilience. And Dean Roll was kind enough to go on saying, In Pursuit of Purpose is tailor-made to help with both of those things. So some quick background on In Pursuit of Purpose. In the past 12 months, we've taught the class 7 classes at Medgar Evers. And 5 of those were in person and 2 of them were online. We've migrated to more of an online experience. Our last class started mid-January 2020 and wrapped up in April. The class was embedded in an organizational behavior course. So the background of the class itself is that it's positive psychology tools and resources, which are thanks to a positive psychologist named Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. So Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar was trained at Harvard, And while he was teaching at Harvard, he wound up teaching 2 of their most popular classes in their history. When he left Harvard, he took those classes with him. They were positive psychology classes, and I had the opportunity to study one of those classes under his guidance. And with his permission, I was able to harvest that class to create the foundations for In Pursuit of Purpose. In Pursuit of Purpose, it's a layered experience made up of 5 modules, roughly 1 hour each, and it takes around 8 hours to complete. So of those modules, we'll go through these pretty quickly. We start off with a bonus module, which is all about how we can rewire our brains so that we break negative thinking and shift our perspective. The next 4 modules could stand on their own, but I've got to tell you that I love, love, love this bonus module. It's especially powerful for youth who have experienced trauma. Often these vulnerable youth can have a victim mentality. That's what I've seen, unfortunately. And they're kind of in this mind space where they think bad stuff just happens to me and I make poor decisions and this is just the way things are. And this module gives them a better understanding of how their brains work so that they can choose to make better decisions going forward. We use the amazing work of a psychologist, Dr. Jonathan Haidt from NYU, and a neuroscientist, Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz from UCLA. So right from the beginning, we crack open their assumptions and show them how to embrace their potential by just explaining this is just the way your brain is wired and you can make different choices in the future. And we teach them how to make those choices. And then Module 1 is all about self-discovery, getting to know yourself. Module 2 is an understanding of our strengths and building our self-confidence. And we have the students take a scientifically based strengths assessment, and then we continue to layer invitations for those students to leverage those strengths that they now know what they are, so they continue to show up in life in a strengths-based way. Module 3 is about dreaming big. Now this is where we connect to our purpose. And I'll tell you that in our program, roughly half of students say that the program helped them discover their purpose. Around a quarter of students say that they already had a sense of what their purpose was, which tracks with those numbers that I shared with you, right? So they say, I kind of knew what it was, but this course helped me clarify and polish that, validate that I'm on the right path. And then about a quarter of the students say, I'm still figuring things out. So that's kind of how the numbers shake out. And in our final module, Module 4, it's all about putting plans in place to live our authentic lives. So this is where the students wind up at the very end with an authentic action sheet, which literally lists out what their strengths are at the top, and then their life purpose, and then their grounded commitments, their authentic actions, and all of the Kaizen steps. Those are the incremental change that they put in, the little baby steps to continually move forward towards their goals. So it's really very focused on taking these aspirational visions they've created and then making them real, making them happen. It's a really fun module. That's the high-level overview of the program that students at Medgar Evers experienced. So talking about the spring semester class that we just wrapped up, we partnered with Medgar Evers professor Ayana Kone, and as I mentioned already, it was embedded into an organizational behavior class of 23 students. And 14 of these students completed all the requirements that we had for the program. So that was their data that we were using. And that was a pre- and post-program emotional baseline assessment, the strength survey that I mentioned, watching all the videos, and completing all the required exercises. So to give you a sense of this program, we'll walk through the survey comparison, some testimonials from staff, and the experience from students. So the students take that pre and post program emotional baseline survey, and here are the results. Everything in green means that it moved in the direction we wanted it to move. Anger was down a little bit over 4%. Anxiety, that one is the really big one, went down 30%. And please remember, this is in Brooklyn, where we started off the emotional baseline assessment before COVID, and we ended it at the peak of COVID in New York City. So that's pretty amazing that anxiety went down 30%. Depression went up. Everybody's staying home. Nobody's going out, hanging out with friends. That's pretty understandable. Grit went up a little bit. Life satisfaction got a nice boost of 11%. And self-esteem went up a tiny bit as well. So some of the student feedback, students noted in anonymous feedback. This was Professor Iona Kone asked for this feedback from her students. And they said that the program helped them feel greater ownership over their life, such as learning to manage stress, building constructive habits, and developing greater persistence in chasing their dreams. The students were incredibly generous with all the feedback they shared. So out of the pages and pages that we received, here are the feedback that we chose from 3 students. One student shared, "With all my free time, due to these challenging times, In Pursuit of Purpose has become a daily practice for me." And this same student also added that they had taken to sharing what they learned with family and friends. "I've been able to just sit without any distractions and connect with myself in ways that work for me, which is writing down my thoughts in my journal and meditating." And changing these words, the student mentioned that they had an inner dialogue, which was very negative, lots of words like can't and won't. And changing their inner dialogue really helped them deal with these difficult circumstances. They shared, "Changing those words in my vocabulary really helps me during this challenging time because I'm getting a lot of things done that I said I can't do." Professor Kone shared, "During this semester, I noticed a marked difference between the students who had experienced In Pursuit of Purpose compared to my students who had not. These students had an air of hope and positivity. They were also more focused on self-care, which is such an important part of resilience." Dean Roll has been supporting this program, as I mentioned, for a year, and she stated, "All student feedback on this class has been tremendously positive. Students have stated their appreciation and gratitude for the opportunity to think more mindfully about who they are and where they are going." So who they are and where they are going, that translates into why they are going to college, right? Wrapping up, students need to focus on why they are going to college, not just where. Purpose is tied to increased grit and self-efficacy. These 3 things together are powerful for student retention. Purpose helps boost academic engagement since studies become more relevant to what matters to them. They see it as something that will help them achieve their purpose in life. Intrinsic motivation boosts resilience, and purpose is found in the overlap of what you're good at, what you love to do, and what the world needs. This is the important question we need to help our youth answer. What on earth am I here for? So thank you so much for all of your work that you do to help youth answer that question. And we are actively looking for new colleges to partner with to offer our free online class. Not only can you use this as a tool to boost academic engagement and retention, We've also found that it helps with student wellness and resilience, as showcased with our success during the time of COVID in New York. We're also pursuing an exciting research initiative with Claremont Graduate University, which we would love to have you be part of. So we've got a lot of cool things going on. If you'd like to talk more, here's my contact information. I know we've covered a lot of ground, and I would love to take time to answer your questions now.